Caddis Maximus here, this time with a review of Harbor Freight's new Doyle heavy-duty forged wire strippers. These are professional grade. They call them electricians multi-purpose pliers, and they kind of deserve that. Let's get this open. Super duty packaging. Wow. Really need a lot of power to get through that. Seriously struggling. They do have some robust packaging, so they should, if you mail order these, arrive undamaged. Let's get this cleaned up. Much better. So they came out with these, regular price $22, and I think they're actually reasonable for that. I'm actually a little bit surprised. It seems like there's even a new improvement to Doyle's because these have a dual molded handle, and it feels pretty decent. TPU nylon, surprisingly enough, and these are Taiwanese made. And if you get the special, like, rare coupons that you can use on the, we'll call it Harbor Freight's name brand stuff, you can get these for cheaper. But for $22, these are real similar to the Milwaukee's that came out a few years ago. And I actually think that these may be made by Milwaukee. But these are actually made like a heavy-duty pair of pliers. They have a hot forged rivet that, as it cools, it makes it really tight. Is also very heavy-duty. Pretty nice diameter in there. Should flip it over to the other side, we can see it moving. But a nice regular heavy-duty rivet, just like pliers. We can see that there's this thick edge of steel here. That proves that it was forged because they smash it together, and then there's what's known as the flashing. Part of the forging process is the inset, since these jaws are really thick, and the whole purpose of these is they work much better as needle nose pliers. Compared to many of what would be considered nice professional grade ones, we have Ideals here and some Kleins, etc., Greenlees, is that these ground ones have been the nice ones. They have nice sharp ground teeth just like these. But the issue has always been that the stamped steel, which is a very high grade steel, just isn't quite thick enough. So when you're maybe trying to use a pair of these more professionally, the Ideals worked out a little better because they had a thicker beam on them. But they'd end up bending, and then you wouldn't get nice cuts. And so that's kind of the deal with these, is that they're forged steel needle nose pliers with nice ground wire strippers integrated into them. So the forging process does the initial step, and we can see that it is a two-step grinding. They did grind the cutting surfaces. That was done second, but the first process was actually grinding the inside surface there flat. So definitely pretty decent. These are not spring-loaded, a lot like the Milwaukee's are, but this particular pair I got off the shelf isn't too bad. It does have a couple, the most common threaded 832 and 632, as well as a crimper. This crimper is kind of terrible. It's really large, so this will work on 12 and 14 gauge wire, but on thinner wires, 18 gauge, etc., that's going to be too large of a diameter. You're not going to get very good crimps. Plus, it just doesn't come together close enough to do small crimps. But for heavier duty electrical connections, that's okay, but I think it's a little cheesy. They could have included at least a couple of sizes of crimps, maybe like this GB or these Ideals did. But besides that, I do like the idea of them. I like that they are nice and forged and heavy duty. They have two different, I'll call them steel wire cutters, that are these shear cutters on the sides, just dedicated for cutting any kind of steel wire, which I kind of like. And, you know, since they are dedicated cutters, you don't have to worry about messing up the integrated curved cutters. And those are what's always has set apart a nice pair of traditional wire strippers, I should say traditional ground wire strippers, is the nice curved surface. So when you're using these to make any type of cut, but particularly more delicate wires, such maybe this coaxial cable here, that it makes a really nice, sharp, and well-defined without crushing the piece of wire. Well-defined shear is the word I'm looking for, and we can see that these really are indeed razor sharp. Now, don't cut live electrical wires or they won't be razor sharp anymore. Let's get another piece of wire over here. The Ergonomics, I think they could be a little better. I kind of like these GBs because they have these far forward overmolds. So once you have sheared the insulation of the wire, it allows you to, more easily get it up on the wire, cut it, and then be able to pull it off. And they could have done that on these, but I think they're fine. I mean, they are pretty heavy, feel like about a half a pound. Let's go ahead and do a strip here. Here we are. I actually have some 14 gauge wire. We do have laser etched. It would be nice if they had stamped that. I'll admit that as well. You'll get used to the sizings, but if you're going to put sizings on these types of tools, I really appreciate stampings just because they withstand abuse and use. They stand the test of time. Anything that's printed or laser etched, of course, isn't as durable and as robust. So we'll do I've got a 14 gauge wire here. We'll go ahead and just do and make sure that it's really well centered, because since these are ground, if you get the wire halfway in between or in too small of a size, it'll just cut strands and you won't even feel it because they are razor sharp. And just do a little cinch like that. What I like to do is then grab the insulation with the next larger size. That way I'm not risking. And the insulation on this wire is particularly, those are razor sharp, particularly recalcitrant. And then if we take a quick close look, I don't see any strands. It does not appear that I cut through any strands, so that's pretty nice. You got to make sure the wire is well centered. But the subtlety of that test of having no broken strands just by getting onto the wire just nice and centered. I should probably get on the 14 gauge here, and we'll do that again. Is when you put it in, make sure it's centered, and then you just bring the pliers fully to a close. And then once you remove the insulation, if you don't have any broken strands, then what it's telling you is that both edges are symmetrically sharp, or they're both extra sharp. And I've run into a few pairs of ground pliers, particularly some of these sheet metal style, where one side just isn't quite as sharp as the other. And what that ends up doing is pushing the wire upwards, causing particularly on stranded wire, causing several strands to get cut because the duller edge is acting as a chisel, just yamming the wire. So probably too long of a video, but it's kind of neat because these are by far and away the nicest pair of wire strippers Harbor Freight's ever had. And apparently they are doing a Doyle automatic wire stripper. And to tell you the truth, as far as non-automatic types, I've always really liked the ground ones. And these are all the styles. I've seen the Milwaukee's, but never picked them up. And they start around 25 bucks. So you might want to just, get a Milwaukee, but lifetime warranty at Harbor Freight, and just walk in and replace it. So that's at least something they're offering, and these are nice. I do like the only real issue is that it is a really thick beam in there, but for that sacrifice you get actual nice needle nose pliers. And if you're working particularly with solid core conductors, that's one of the biggest issues, is you bend up these other styles. And so these are legitimate needle nose pliers with nearly the same strength as some nice normal needle nose, but you don't have to swap back and forth where you're stripping some of the Romex or whatever, and then getting the needle nose and bending it around to make little loops to put around terminals, etc. And I think it's kind of neat. I actually really, of a lot of the Doyle pliers, I actually like these the most because at least they did pay attention and put a pretty nice grind on them. They're not absolutely perfect, but they are very sharp. And that's probably what I'll end with, is be careful, because you can cut yourself on those. They really are pretty legit, to tell you the truth. I like them. Heavy duty wire strippers. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing, and hope you had a happy new year. I think I forgot to say that. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.